to mingle and network. But right now, I would like to introduce all guests here today. Again, I welcome you on this Tuesday morning, second day of the semester. I know, yes. That's what the professors in particular, we're most excited to when the semester is started and this break is over.
Not blocked, right?
And again, I welcome you.
Is the exposure okay? It looks a little dark.
You
can increase it in post, right?
Yes, all that.
Here in
good man.
With his
Good shit. So
you have to make sure it's perfect.
Wow, that's a nice kid.
And there are muffins and croissants and a big tip jar, so be generous, and hopefully you'll enjoy that in the company of your peers and colleagues. I'm Christian Butzke. Professor of Food Science, also worked partially out of the Office of Research as the so-called SUFI, the Senior University Fellow for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and Espressos and Entrepreneurs is one of those little outlets of how we want to get some both like-minded as well as entrepreneurially curious colleagues, students, faculty, alumni together, and that's the kind of mix we have here today. We really are representative of all those different groups that make up our Boilermaker entrepreneurial environment, and that's great to see. That's how innovation happens. And because I realized I'm exactly the same age as Nicholas Madura
Can you get a photo of them? What? Do you have a phone?
I needed to.
Can you get a photo of these three? That's really funny.
Into the room. And so today,
let me borrow that.
We have Max and Charlie, who are highly entrepreneurial students, and alumni. Charlie is an alum, and he'll tell his story in a moment. And we have been talking, we have been eating and drinking together, and we have been contemplating the future of everything that we're doing here at Purdue to maintain our national leadership, but to also look at what's going on in other places. And so I've asked Maxi, and you see him here as a ChatGPT entrepreneurial superhero.
It looks exactly like you.
It does.
Exactly.
Pretty good. The hypersonic missile.
I can see.
He's not wearing his three-piece suit today, but that will come next time. So, without much ado, I'll let him talk about his background. He's from Pasadena, California, and so I forgot now, I think it was an Indiana team that won the Rose Bowl. I forgot now which one. I completely forgot about that. But coming up to tell us about your story, he's a super senior here at Purdue, and he is a company founder, and he has some great visions of what we can do next. So please welcome Maxi.
For those of you behind the pole seat, all right. So thank you for the warm introduction. Lovely photo. I was wondering why Dr. Butzke didn't ask me for a profile photo or like a headshot, and now I know why. I'm like, can't beat a ChatGPT image, right? So I'm Max. I'm a senior at Purdue, and I was starting in electrical engineering, then I switched over to interdisciplinary engineering. That's like a whole journey. So I started in electrical engineering my freshman year. And I'm from LA. I'm an Eagle Scout, along with Charlie. We were actually from the same troop, actually. And then I came to Purdue because a lot of people in our troop were actually, in our patrol, actually ended up getting Eagle and came to Purdue. There was like 7 of us out of the 10 patrol. We all came to Purdue for engineering too. So I came to Purdue, and the decision behind that actually was because Virginia Tech sent me an admissions letter saying, hey, we accepted you for nursing. And I was like, and then they sent a follow-up email saying they made a mistake. And then there was like, NAE, and they didn't even put my actual name, and I was like, all right, I'm coming to Purdue. That was the deciding factor. And so they're not getting my endowment, But then I came to Purdue. I saw this team that was really cool. It was they're doing like robots. It was one of the first competitions that was actually using lots of software, because most robotics competitions traditionally use a lot of mechanical. It was very mechanically focused. And this was actually a Chinese-based competition, a subsidiary of DJI. And I came here, I saw the team, restarted it after COVID because it kind of like shut down. And I think I scaled it to about like 250 students, and we raised about $70,000 to $80,000 of department funding and corporate funding to build like 7 robots to go compete in China on behalf of Purdue. And that taught me a lot about like, business, kind of liked, pitching and, being in front of people. And I started kind of exploring, the entrepreneurial path. And when I started off, I had like very little, knowledge on, entrepreneurship. My first encounter in the Entrepreneurship Center was actually with Tyler. Tyler Mantle was still in Innovates at the time. And I walked in the front door, and he was just on the whiteboard, like scribbling, like something. And then I walked in, I'm like, hi, and I'm like a sophomore. And I was wondering what it was, and he said, oh, let's sit down. And then he kind of explained to me, so Max, this is what like a Series A round does. And I was like, looking back, it's like, that's such a basic thing. But that was like a very like, core moment for me, because that kind of kickstarted like all of the series of events that kind of led me to where I am today. When I started building, that was like, I think it was like a month or two, I think it was like 3-4 months after ChatGPT 1 was first released, like 3.5 was released. And so I started building a project with a friend. And, I went to different student organizations, went to Anvil, went to like, I think Founders Club, kind of saw what the community was doing. And I was like interested, it was intriguing. Let's put it that way. But I didn't really quite understand how broad the skill gap or the talent gap was until like I traveled outside Purdue and went to like San Francisco. I actually was accepted into YC startup schools. So then it was like a one-day event. I flew in, I begged my parents, I flew into San Francisco with my luggage, left the Frontier Airlines bounced me off, and so I bought an American Airlines ticket to San Francisco. So I had to spend another $700 just so that I can make it on time right as the check-in started. And that's where I like met like Sam Altman on my way to the restroom, and like I was kind of like shocked because at the time I was like the first celebrity I ever met was Sam Altman. And then I was like it was interesting to see like all these founders our age just running across the stage just to get an autograph with them. There I met like founders of Twitch, founders of Reddit. And in the following week, I went to a program called Build Space, and I got to meet like, so you basically had to submit like a weekly update for your project. And at the time I was trying to build this like, language learning app. And we had, by the time like you reach week 6, you can, if you submitted all your updates, you could attend the event in person with like 1,000 other builders from like, and then there we saw like builders from Bolivia, Spain, Italy, really top talent from like the brightest kids. Like some are as young as 16 who's won like a Swift competition, and some are as old as 40 with kids deciding to make a career change into entrepreneurship. And so I really got to see how entrepreneurship was really fundamentally a cultural problem and not like not just an institutional one, because people there really were supportive of each other building things. And so when I came back to Purdue, it was really interesting because like there's that gap in terms of motivation. Because when I was there, I was excited to go build things. People there were super ecstatic about their idea. It's almost like it was like the most important thing to them in the world. Here it's like, oh, I want to get a job. I want to go to like, Amazon, or like I want to go to like, big tech or consulting or whatever. And I'm like, and even Harvard talked about this. It's like the Bermuda Triangle of talent, right? Everybody goes into consulting, banking, and big tech, and then all of this brilliant Wharton Business School talent, engineering talent just goes down the drain. And honestly, in an economy like the people who really grow the size of the pie are the entrepreneurs. And so it makes very little sense to me why we spend so much money funding the sports teams, which is like, millions and billions of dollars funding the sports teams, and we're not funding the entrepreneurs. And we're not spending the same amount of money, we don't even need the same amount, just like a fraction, a tenth of it, on the entrepreneurs, right? And it makes it's funny to me because like a lot of people, I heard some people say, like, well, we're entrepreneurs, right? We will have, they'll find a way to get things done. But that's like saying, I want to be an Olympic athlete, and I don't need a coach, and I don't need a logistics team. And if you look at like US, how much we fund sports, there's a reason why we win the most gold medals every year. Like there's a reason behind that. And I'm saying that coming from that world because I used to actually compete. This is a side of me most people don't know. I used to actually be a competitive athlete along with my sister. And she was ranked 2nd in the country for Taekwondo. And so this was not in so Taekwondo is split into two categories. There's sparring and then there's Pumse. Sparring's in the Olympics, the other one's not. And so
What is your
Taekwondo. So we're the same. So yeah, we both got our black belts, and then I wanted just my black belt, so I got it, and I was out, and I came to Purdue, and so I'm not as athletic as she is, not as flexible either, and so when I came back to Purdue, I saw like some certain things, like there's a lot of like really great talent at Purdue. I think the conception. I had a friend of mine who, he's built this really great booking portal, and I convinced him to go apply to YC. He didn't think he would get in, and he actually got an interview, which means he was like in the top 10% of batches. And I told him, he complained to me, saying like, oh, Purdue, we don't have like those tier 1 founders. And I'm like, I disagree, because we're like ranked like 4th in graduate engineering. We are like one of the best institutions on the planet for engineering. So it makes no sense why there's this discrepancy between like Georgia Tech and the and UIUC and the number of founders they produce and the venture capital they raise versus where we are. Because if you Google online right now on PitchBook, we're ranked 42, and we're behind UNC. We're behind a lot of schools that I actually thought we would be ahead of. And what's surprising about that is that the misconception of there's this lack of talent. I actually did the calculations actually last night. So if we were to take the demographic data of San Francisco, which is 7% of people in the Northern California are business owners, and we just like make an estimate of like, how many Purdue students are from California and from North Cal specifically. And I kind of did a rough estimate. I just threw it into ChatGPT. I prompted the criteria, and it did the math, and I kind of looked at it. Math checks out. So the low number is between, you want to guess how many founders that would be at Purdue, active founders?
3,000.
Okay, not that many, but any other guesses?
1,000.
So on the high end, we got 1,500. On the low end, we got 400. That was the estimate. And so the mid-range was about like 700 or something like that. I don't see 700 founders at Purdue. But my phone book begs to differ, because in my phone book, I have a couple hundred Purdue founders. So there is this very clear gap between what the students are experiencing and whatever KPIs are being measured in the various administrative processes, right? Not that the data is wrong, like what Jeff Bezos said. Sometimes it just might be measuring the wrong thing. And so the problem with that is there is a huge problem where I think a lot of people in the community I know might have heard of like, students complaining about certain things, whatever, certain things are dissatisfied. But the thing is that we really need to listen to these concerns seriously, because at some point the students will stop complaining, and that's when the problem's too late. That is when the problem is unfixable. Because if your customers are complaining, that is when the problem is still fixable. In fact, they care enough, they think it can be better. That's a very, very important health indicator of the university's community. So if people are still complaining, that's like a good thing. And a lot of the complaints that I feel like I've been getting is in the form of support for non-IP undergraduate related companies. And I was actually speaking to Parun Chanda. He's the CEO of Onboard. It's like a $10 billion company. It's like a board meeting company. He actually invited to his house on, I think, like last Friday, my bad. And so I drove all the way like 2 hours to I think Ventura County or in Orange County, and then so I'm from Pasadena. I had to like drive all the way over to the coast, went to his house, and then he kind of like walked me through what it was like at Purdue. And it turns out like things weren't much better when, in his opinion, in his day too. But he kind of walked me through like how he wished things were, because he wishes that the community could be better. He wants to stay engaged with Purdue, right? He's invested in 7 or 8 different Purdue companies, including Socio. And he was telling me, he's like, it would be really nice if there was like a directory of just startups, like undergraduate startups that I could just mentor, and then like I can just invest, like I give like a $20,000, $30,000 angel check-in, right? So that's a very clear funding pathway that we're missing out on. And maybe it's because Purdue for Life has some kind of monopoly over the alumni and we're not allowed to access it. I don't know. But really, that's what we're all here for. And I really hope that there can be some kind of action plan. I'm just not just all talk. I want to actually solve this problem, and that's why we're all gathered here today. So what I really want to do is really three things. Very simple. I would like to have 3 meetings with anybody who is in the administration and the student community who would like to meet with me. The first meeting would be about, I will research 5 universities that I think are world-class, that I think we should we could look to as maybe a fair bar with metrics, right? And we can do those case studies and do that research. We'll present it in that first meeting. In the second meeting, we're going to do a case study of Purdue's ecosystem and kind of what is going on at Purdue, what the gaps are compared to these other universities. And then the third meeting, we can kind of engage in discourse on what is the direction we want to go in as a university, right? Because if we can determine what that direction is, I think we can put trust in not just everybody else in the community, but also the student leaders to move the ship forward, right? We need to kind of move in the same direction. But this is one of those problems where it's it requires such high levels of collaboration across the various departments, the various majors and the industries. And so it can't be done by one person alone, but having that one direction set is very important. And I think that it would be very, very helpful where we can give student founders the autonomy to go do these things. Because part of the issue with the student leadership, which is when it's done right, is we're supposed to be the voice for, and unfortunately a lot of student organizations aren't run that way, and I know that. But as an Eagle Scout, I know that part of our responsibility is to fix problems in our community. And so, I'm just trying to do my part as an Eagle Scout, but also as a Purdue student, to really try to fix this problem. And the reason why it's important is because all of these people who are not being supported at the early stages of their startup journey at Purdue, we're not trying to be San Francisco, by the way, right? We just want to be Purdue, the best version of Purdue we could be. So it means when students want to start their company, they can receive that support. And then they will eventually go to San Francisco or whatever, and they go build these crazy companies, right? But you know what that means? That is a check, a guaranteed check. If some of these students eventually become a billionaire, right? Or a multi-millionaire from their exit, right? That's a guaranteed check to Purdue's endowment for the future. I'll be honest. If Purdue supported me more, I would definitely be happy giving 1% of my company, or even something like that, right? To Purdue and be hey, here's a new building, right? But these are people who could be funding the university's future initiatives, and entrepreneurs, we are a demographic minority, but we have an asymmetrical advantage in terms of the amount of impact we have, right? And so not capitalizing on the network effects of this this small group of very, very talented and highly motivated people is kind of a disservice to, I honestly think it's just a lost economic value for the university, quite frankly. And honestly, again, it's not there's not anyone's at fault. This is just something that I think is responsibility that all of us need to take more agency on, because I think part of the issue is we kind of look around and we're I got classes, and it's understandable, but look, I just kind of thought to myself, I'm a senior, I'm going to be out of here in a couple months. I want to see how much help I can do, because part of the issue is most students student founders who are as vocal about some of these issues as I am have already left. They've already gone out, dropped out of Purdue, or they've already transferred to Georgia Tech, or they go to UIUC on weekends to go to their founder community. This is a real phenomenon. A lot of students go to UIUC on the weekend to go to their startup community, and they hang out with those founders over there and their community. And then some are in San Francisco, they dropped out and they felt like they weren't supported. Some transferred. I know 4 people in my network who have already transferred to Georgia Tech within 3 semesters. And so I think that's in this community, that's I think if I'm seeing that, I think I would say I would be pretty alarmed, quite frankly. And in fact, one of the people who actually transferred from Purdue is actually Charlie here. Charlie is a Purdue alum. He went to USC. He got the incubator, the student incubator started there at USC. And it produced about, 19, 20 YC companies within 2 years of operation, something like that. But Charlie's a Techstars founder. He's a good friend of mine since middle school, and we were in Scouts together. But I kind of want to let Charlie talk about his experiences at Purdue and what caused him to switch over. Charlie, you want to?
Sure.
give a quick 7 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I've actually got slides that illustrate my point a little bit better. I'm going to try to plug that in for me. In my big print. I'll just I'll look at the slides. Let's just see if HDMI works. Lectures. Plug in at that laptop. Yeah, that'll make more sense. Alrighty, hello everyone. My name is Charlie Geraci. I was a electrical engineer in undergrad, long time ago, 7 years ago, and I kind of got the bug for entrepreneurship. I grew up in California, and neither of my parents are engineers or entrepreneurs. And let's see, yeah, just do that now. There we go. Awesome. And so I discovered Purdue from its project-based engineering talent and the culture that the undergrad had around how intensely organized clubs and kind of missions together were. And so what I mean by that is things like the Bechtel Center drew me, things like, kind of the Ball Formula E Club, et cetera, et cetera. That was really exciting for me, but I kind of got the bug to do entrepreneurship, and it kind of dragged me back towards California. But there were some reasons things that they did really well that I think you can implement here very effectively. Next slide. So Purdue has this unmatched collaborative culture. You don't see this at a lot of universities. You kind of feel this during VGR, freshman orientation, and you kind of, wherever you come from or whatever you were doing before, you kind of drop it and join in this kind of builder mentality. And I think that's really hard to force, and we are very lucky to already have that. And so Purdue's also overlooked a lot of times, which is actually a good thing. We don't necessarily need to be the Stanford or a Berkeley or something like that, where it's kind of integrated into the city or integrated into the faculty, etc. There's an opportunity to not have some of the negatives of San Francisco culture, where it's very hype-based, it's very, speed is the only thing that matters. You can't really build really big industry-changing products in a rush. And I think that a lot of the hype around these types of companies isn't actually true. And now that I'm doing it myself, I definitely can agree that meticulousness and steadiness at scale is much more effective for achieving your goal than sprinting and building something in a hackathon and then launching on Monday morning, unless you're in consumer products. And so I think that Purdue's draining a lot of top talent, including myself, to the West Coast for these opportunities. But I don't think it has to be there. I think that we can actually have our own version of that that's more effective at certain things than even what exists in the Bay. And the Bay was kind of at its peak in the late 90s, early 2000s, and things have changed over time, and there's kind of a bit of a hollowed out system there. It does exist in some things, but it's not the same young people building something where nothing exists before them. It's just a different dynamic. Next slide. So I ended up at USC in this program called the Iodine and Young Academy, and it was created by Jimmy Iodine and Dr. Dre, which is really funny. But the problem they had at Beats was that they would have separate teams, and they were having conflict between the teams because they weren't speaking the same language. They weren't interdisciplinary, which is the whole point of the curriculum and the whole structure of the school and who it attracts. And the program focuses on entrepreneurship, engineering, and design. And at Beats, they had a problem between these teams, and so they needed people who could speak designers' language, but understand the business insights and requirements, and then also talk technical and get things done on schedule and understand the interplay. And in the same way, Purdue has a lot of really good technical talent, a strong business school, and honestly a great UX program as well. And so we have all of the ingredients for a similar type of event, and now we have the undergrad who are hungry for it. And so I think that this is kind of something the university and all the different people in this room are already recognizing and making their own attempt at. And I think that we can make like 10 years of progress in just under a year if we all kind of, play to our own strengths. And I think it's happening whether, we organize or not, but I feel like one of the reasons our team moved back from Los Angeles to Westfield including Lakshay, who's still an undergrad here, who's on our team, is because we sense that it's very difficult to build in the same way as in the 90s. And so now we have remote work and we're competing with companies that are more flexible and they don't need a traditional office. So the game is changing once again, and I think Purdue is poised to take those, R1 research heavy, very slow moving but methodical systems and pair that with the entrepreneurship that we have from the, very hungry but kind of not well-guided undergrad, and combining those things, again, IP and tech transfer, grad student as well, but also things like SaaS products that aren't in the traditional IP tech transfer kind of mantra that we have today. Next slide. I want to talk about one last thing. This was my experience at IY. These are all undergrad. They're hyper-organized. They're hyper competitive, but in a way that they build off of each other. So even if you're not in the undergrad program, you often have outside students who are now getting roped into like IWA clubs and projects in a way that they feel very included, they're building something, and it kind of, a lot of times they wish they could have transferred into the program. So across, extended reality stuff, I worked at a startup there that was developing mixed reality interface design stuff. There's rocketry and hardware stuff. There's one team is building glasses that can actually understand the context of what a visually impaired person is not seeing, and it can relay that context to them with multimodal cues. Really great stuff on research, etc., entrepreneurship, things like that. It all blends itself really well, and the catalyst that created this program is all here ready to go at Purdue. I see it in the types of undergrad students and the types of exciting newsletters that I get from you guys. It's definitely just on the cusp. And so I want to really be a part of that and actually next slide. One thing that I ended up doing while we were at USC, one other thing they have is a lot of really great competitions, events, grants, prizes. They kind of start with ideas and they kind of bring you through the whole process. But they also provide technical resources, they provide capital at that kind of bootstrap stage. And then the best part is a lot of the judges of those competitions and the attendees are in venture. Some of them are actually alumni. I worked at an alumni companies. I've actually brought on a current undergrad at IWA to our team as well. So like the kind of pulling everybody up is a really great cultural thing that they have, and Purdue has something similar to that. And I think the most important part of that is because the kind of the wider venture community, especially in Los Angeles, is at these events, the prizes don't actually matter. They're not the important part. The important part is getting to that conversation with the people who can actually see that dream. Many people in the room won't understand what your vision is, but in venture, you often have to find that niche and kind of find that diamond in the rough, especially early on. And I think it's a really great opportunity that it's not forced, it's organic. And it's so exciting, and everyone's just there to support and give back. And so that's one thing they do really well. The other side, if you can advance my slide, let me get a second. One of my images isn't loading, is there was this thing going on at USC while I was an undergrad, which was there was really great student clubs. We're doing cool competitions and hackathons and all this great stuff. It's similar to what Max is doing. And then there's also these really great, faculty programs and like admin kind of side that was a little bit slower moving, but kind of got through a lot of red tape eventually, which was really good. And what ended up happening is that the university recognized that the enthusiasm undergrads had was limited by their ability for 4 years of time, really like 2 years of time, and finally get up and running. And there was a lot of faculty that were like, I see this, how can I support? And so they were kind of getting involved with clubs, and then eventually they took the whole thing and merged it from undergrad excitement to university level missions. And I was kind of at a time, I was running actually 2 of the different entrepreneurship clubs, which was a terrible idea. Pick one and do it well. And I kind of got approached by some of the faculty that I was asking to be mentors and all this stuff, and they were like, well, why don't we just do this like legitimately? Like do it from day one, from the full stack. And so there's programs like the Incubator, which is a actual like sub-department inside of the entrepreneurship school that has now had like 250 companies go through it. And about 25% of those companies survive long enough, hopefully forever, to raise Series A. So there is an advantage to both the excitement and enthusiasm of undergrads who want to move really, really quick and break things, and the slower moving but long-term success outcomes of the admin side of what they want to see it grow into. And so I feel like when I was an undergrad, there was some enthusiasm, there was some enthusiasm, but it wasn't as structured as it needed to be. It's getting more and more structured, but they're not going to accomplish anything if they don't have the structure and the experience and the mentorship and the guidance of admin, of the people who are faculty level or even staff level for logistics and helping the whole thing move. And so it's this kind of tightly held bond for the success of entrepreneurship at Purdue as an undergrad experience and a grad experience, and the university's mission of some tech transfer, of course, but also bringing back and keeping the cycle, in a circle rather than just having education and then losing talent to the West Coast, which is kind of what happened in my case. One more slide. And so now I have a startup called Prismia, and we do a lot of core user experience stuff for commercial real estate brokers to manage their transactions and keep everything kind of in one place, essentially, and make sure that from the beginning to the end, we're keeping track of all of the communications around the transaction. So that's what we've been building. We'd love to expand it, but we keep our aim small, miss small mentality. Lakshay's on our team. We went through Techstars about 6 months ago. We then raised some venture capital, building the MVP while raising venture a little bit, and now we're kind of getting ready. It's in the customer's hands. We're going to start scaling a little bit and then raise like a seed round here. But those types of experiences and the handoff from starting as an ambitious undergrad who knew nothing and had great goals but no way to get there, and being involved with faculty and mentorship and clubs and this whole ecosystem that is organized at USC now made it possible. I would not have been able to get there without the village's support. And so you kind of have to be able to have a narrative through line of how does this work, because there's so many points of failure that can occur. 90% of startups fail, but if you have, next slide, if you have the ecosystem, you can actually reduce that failure rate. The first 50% of failures for startups are kind of that beginning point. The idea doesn't work, the team breaks up, et cetera, et cetera. And if you can kind of provide the scaffolding around those students and those ideas, you can actually have a healthy and vibrant ecosystem that produces top-tier startups better than a lot of the stuff you see in San Francisco now, which I argue is sometimes on the why are you building this? Okay, it's Uber for dogs, why? So I think that our attention to detail through our focus on, not just building surveillance state apps, which may be controversial in SF, but we build really important things. And the culture is already there. The talent is here. We don't want them to leave. And now all we're missing is the organizational structure that makes a through-line narrative from I'm a freshman to I'm now returning as a mentor from my successful, whatever, entrepreneurial journey. So that's what I have. Next slide. I would love to connect to all of you and kind of hear what you're good at, what you're already doing, how I can help. And again, our team has moved to Westfield. We left LA, although we're still very much a presence there. We have our West Coast network that I would love to help connect. I've already talked to the guys I know at Techstars, and they would love to do a University Catalyst here like they did at USC. They love heavy what do they call it? Not deep tech, but some version of industrial stuff. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Charlie, I apologize. You have to speak against the espresso machines here, but we're still improving our technology here. But I really appreciate having you here as an alum, Max, both of you as giving kind of the student's perspective. I have been developing my program from the faculty's perspective, and so working together on all levels with the alumni as well to improve our system, to have some higher goals of how, to take some examples, but also, of course, chart our own path here in the Midwest. I think that's important, and your commitment to helping us improve our system, Max's ideas of having some meetings to actually move things forward. We know how preciously little time you have left here at Purdue and how quickly you move on. Balancing that with the old professors who stay here, it seems forever, I think we can come to a good compromise to keep in touch. So that's really exciting to me, and I think, again, encouragement as well as some life criticism, I think, is important to move things along. So we have a few minutes for questions or comments from the audience. Again, this is the kind of casual conversation that we want to keep going here. Anything, you have a chance, you can connect later, but any comment, anything you want to say? Mo, Justin, anybody? There's one. Gentleman in the back, speak up.
This might be a dumb question. I'm an undergrad, and I have never been to California. I'm from Indiana. What is it that, it seems like every friend that I have is really crushing it in entrepreneurship, maybe mainly tech. What is it that makes California such a hotbed? Like, what is it that makes it so...
You want to answer that, or do you want me to?
I can answer from my perspective.
Okay.
I have my own criticisms of the Bay. I even have my own criticisms of the way Los Angeles is structured. I think it's because back in the day, everyone would grow up somewhere, and then they, as a young person, leave for greener pastures, untapped, whatever. And SF existed because everyone was, Bell Labs, Xerox PARC, etc. Those were like, okay, that's the big hurdle to build something. But then everyone flocked there because of the network. Same thing with Hollywood, it works the same way. But it's basically, the only real reason is because everyone's there. And so you can't help but have this like beehive collision space just on the street. And like the stories of old is going up on Sand Hill Road and like running into VCs as you're getting out of the taxi cab to go pitch to another VC. And so, and this is like Rome was this way back in the day, where you had all of the best hyper-specific talent kind of stacked on top of each other. And they were able to strike across domain expertise, and Paris was like this back in the Renaissance as well. And so it's really not something that's not possible here. It's kind of already going on. It's just, at least from my perspective, being an undergrad, like 6 years ago, it wasn't intentional. It was kind of like, haphazard atomic collision, rather than I'm going to this structured event to meet this type of people. I am prepared to discuss my ideas, get ideas from others, and it's kind of just, that's just how it happened naturally in California.
And to tack onto that part, so Charlie answered it from the institutional side. I can tell you what drove that institutional side. It's really two things. The first thing is the culture, and the second is the kind of people that enforce that culture, right? So if you have, let's say you're a Christian, right, or you're a Catholic, you go to church because those are people with your shared values. When I was in Scouts, these are people who followed the Scout law, followed the Scout code. There's a language we speak. At Purdue, the founders, we are also have a different, people who are founders naturally, from a psychological standpoint, is similar to a profile of an artist. People in San Francisco are high in two critical dimensions, not just one, both. The highest in intelligence, so synthesizing large amounts of information. Second, high creativity, high trait openness, right? It's not my words. Andreessen Horowitz, Mark Andreessen said that in an interview, but also this is just from my own experience as well to back it up. It is true. People in San Francisco might have really 7 creative hobbies, but then they're like a crack CS major, right? We have those people here too. But the problem is the fact that when you don't have a micro environment in Purdue that is enforcing that culture, people just they will have 4 or 5 peers that will say oh, I'm just trying to get a job, and then you're thinking to yourself and I'm prey of that. I fell guilty of that, fell victim to that as well. It was just oh, maybe I should apply it to project management or product management. I didn't have, and especially because we're young people coming in from high school with different levels of maturity and life stages. What do you think is going to happen when you come into Purdue and like, ooh, new school, what is going to happen? And your peers are all looking for a job. You're just going to follow that. But if you were high agency and I met like 7, 8 different founders who were my age, and he's already raised a Series A, and I'm like, oh shit, there's a different path. I want to do that. I want to do that instead. And just that awareness isn't at Purdue. And part of that can be solved by media. We have great marketing and media for there's a nuclear reactor on campus that I know about because we marketed that, right? Where's our marketing? And that's one part of the issue. Well, I would say the public communications part, right? But I also think getting an ecosystem together that's good. We don't need to know how do you know it's good? There's a great statement that I follow, which is marketing is the tax you pay for a mediocre product. So if the community is really good, it's really solid, students will tell everybody about it. And guess what? People will come to Purdue, and we can literally tack on admissions and ask them this. Like, how many students are coming to Purdue for entrepreneurship? They probably, if we did manage to make a successful program 10 years time, admissions will be like, oh, by the way, this student came to Purdue and he cited, or he or she cited the entrepreneurship program, or he or she cited the community, because some alumni would tell some other undergrads, they like, come here, come apply. We got this great community, right? And then word would spread like wildfire, right? Because I would trust my opinions of my friends. I mean, Charlie recommended me to go to a certain school or a certain program. I would flock there, right? And those network effects from people who you respect, founders you respect, that's an important thing, right? Entrepreneurship fundamentally isn't a push function, it's a pull function, right? And the problem is a lot of times we think like, oh, here's an agenda, here, let me teach you this curriculum. And it's like, and if you're like a really capable founder and you're like high agency or you're busy trying to juggle classes and trying to build a startup, the last thing you want to hear is some BS advice from somebody who claims to have done something maybe in, like, I don't know, no shame on consultants, but unfortunately a lot of consultants like to propagate certain mental models that really don't work out in the real world. And I would rather spend an hour with someone like Parun or like Charlie giving me that tactical advice on what I should execute on, what I should be doing, right? And then keeping me accountable. That accountability is also a huge driving factor. When you can see your peers making progress, getting stuck, and openly asking for help, that creates a chain reaction for other students to come in, because they actually did studies on this this is actually from civics and in political science. When you start a movement, you don't start it like when people protest on the street. There's always the one crazy dude that always does it and protests regardless of what happens, right? That's the person that starts the movement. The most important people actually are the second, third, or fourth people that join that first person in that protest, because that brings legitimacy to the first person bringing the protest. And the only way you get the second and third or fourth person is when they see there's a first person. Some people will only join a movement once they see one person. Some will join only when they see 5 people. Some will join only when they see 10 or 15 different people, right? People have different levels of risk tolerance. And to say that entrepreneurs are only the ones that run through a wall and then will find answers no matter what, that's maybe me. That might be like a specific demographic of founders, but a lot of founders really are closer to the media more. Like they're thinking about it, they're on a cusp of doing it, they're not sure, right? And I think it was like trying to connect that to like a different idea. In these decision-making factors are important. And they even talk about this in anti-insurgency combat in the military, right? In anti-insurgency combat, every time you take out a combatant, you create 5 new combatants, because the people you take down, you kill, you made the decision for their brothers, friends, family who saw their insurgent friend get killed, and now they want to join the insurgency, right? That's an ideological shift, right? Similar thing in entrepreneurship, right? It's like we see one person do and they're successful. You're like, wow, I know that guy. I know like Charlie, maybe I could do it too. There's not that much, and that is very, very powerful. More than any other form of media, whatever, just live proof in your circle. And so if students are coming to campus and they're not like running into most of the most of the companies that started from Stanford, I think were within 60 miles of campus, which is like a quantifiable metric. And so I think yeah,
Sorry,
no worries.
Yeah, I was gonna say culture, really big.
Yeah.
The other thing is money/risk. There's a lot of programs that allow you, like Peter Thiel's fellowship, which I wouldn't recommend. for other reasons. But these programs allow you to take risks financially. Now, of course, defense contractors, et cetera, put in money. Xerox PARC put in a bunch of money. Bell Labs, like I mentioned. These were allowing, just like doing research and taking a bet on a research. Taking a bet on an entrepreneurship is a little bit different structure, but you have to be in a place where the risk is kind of, I don't know how to describe, like spread out. Where obviously VCs will, a 10% success rate is great. That's amazing. That's incredibly high risk. But like you need to de-risk the investment from a structural level. So even if something doesn't work out, things that kind of came out of that may get acquired, may get merged. I know a lot of friends who have had successful exits because they had some sort of technology that was licensed or IP, or it was just simply the team that they acquired. And it's like, you guys did this, we want it. Or sometimes it's just the contract that they have signed that other team wants that deal. And so they'll get acquired for that. It's messy. Stuff lives and dies. But yeah, so risk tolerance was higher out there. It's a little different now. So money is kind of tied to risk, and the culture and the kind of ecosystem removes that risk because it's teaching lessons without failing. Techstars, YC, that's why these programs exist, to de-risk the investment those programs have made, and they make money because other people invest in the risk they've already taken.
I just want to mention or two, coming back to your question, and I know they're kicking us out here and now because I guess the local connoisseurs are coming in. But I lived off of the 90s in Northern California into the early 2000s. And the three universities in the area, Davis, Berkeley, and Stanford, didn't really have that ecosystem either. In fact, it wasn't allowed at the public university to be in it. So all this developed gradually and slowly. There was no Google, there was no Facebook, there was no Uber. So it's actually quite exciting to be in Indiana because we're still moving this forward. Going into a place that already is all settled is not as exciting as being actually a pioneer. And that's why I think the energy that we have here in Indiana, particularly at Purdue, is really cool. And we can be, again, the next Silicon Valley if we play our game right, and if we also consider, we're not in California, but we're also, we should compare ourselves to Silicon Valley, maybe again in the late 80s, early 90s, when Apple was struggling and other companies certainly didn't exist. So there's a lot of potential.
Thanks for interrupting me. Are there any other questions? Like we still, like that was just one. Sorry that was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully you got what you were looking for.
All right, if not, you can stay, pay for your own coffee now, but I want to thank you very much. I think it was a very enlightening perspective, the lasting connections that we have to do now. That's fantastic, and we're going to continue our conversation, maybe create those meetings that you mentioned, and we'll go from there. So thank you all for coming. Have a good rest of the semester, and boil up, I guess.